Good morning, all. We are back again with another episode of A Child's History of the World. Sorry, had to get comfy. Yes, it's fine. Yeah, the classical is fine. We are going to be looking at chapter 37 today. The title is Blood and Thunder. Sounds like a Thor movie. Anywho, Blood and Thunder. Says, I once had a big Newfoundland dog, and he was one of the best friends a boy ever had. I don't know who it was that named him. He was named before I got him. But whoever it was must have been ignorant of history or a bad chooser of names. The dog's name was Nero. Now I understand why he was upset at the dog's name. Nero. What? Just listen and you'll hear. Okay. He was called Nero, and even a dog would have hated such a name had he known whose it once was. Every good story usually has a villain to make it interesting. The story of Rome has plenty of villains, but one of the worst was Nero. He was a Roman emperor who lived not long after Christ, and he is considered one of the cruelest and wickedest rulers that ever lived. He killed his mother. He killed his wife. He killed his teacher, who was named Seneca. Hey.
Ooh, I would like a name like that.
Seneca? You're goofy.
No, Mom, I'm not kidding.
Okay, can you listen, please?
So can I change my name?
No, you may not.
Dang it.
Seneca was a very good teacher, too. We think that Nero ordered both Peter and Paul put to death, for they were executed at the time of Nero's rule. Nero seemed to take great pleasure in making others suffer. He loved to see men torn to pieces by wild beasts. It amused him greatly. Pardon me. I have seen boys who like to throw stones at dogs just to hear them yelp or tear the wings off of butterflies. Such boys must have some Nero in them, don't you think? That's pretty messed up. That's all I gotta say. I know. I know.
Middle finger, literally.
No, we're not. We're not.
What?
My daughter is quite appalled.
Addie, throwing stones at a dog.
Okay, shush. If a man was a Christian... Shush.
Why?
Don't start, Lily. If a man was a Christian, that gave Nero an excuse to torture him horribly. May I have a Kleenex, please, Adelaide? Nero had some of the Christians wrapped in tar and pitch, then placed around the garden of his palace and set fire to as if they were torches. That's pretty messed up. It is even said that Nero set Rome on fire just for the fun of seeing the city burned. Excuse me. The cold weather is certainly wreaking havoc on the sinuses. Then he sat in a tower, and while he watched the blaze spreading, played on a stringed instrument. They say is that Nero fiddled while Rome burned. The fire burned day and night for a whole week and destroyed more than half the city. Nero then laid the blame on the Christians who, he said, started the fire. Did you ever blame someone else for something you had done? If you have more than one child, that's a daily occurrence. Some think Nero really was crazy, and we hope he was, for it's hard to think that any human being who was not crazy could act as he did. Nero built himself an immense palace and overlaid it extravagantly with gold and mother of pearl. It was known as Nero's House of Gold. As its front door, he put up a colossal statue of himself in bronze 50 feet high. Both the House of Gold and the statue were later destroyed, but the Colosseum, which was built a few years after, was named Colosseum for this colossal statue of Nero that was once there. Nero was very conceited. He thought he could write poetry and sing beautifully. Although he did both very badly, he liked to show off, and no one dare laugh at him. Had anyone been so bold as to make fun of him or even to smile, he would have had that person put to death instantly. Even Roman people who were not Christians feared and hated Nero. The military rebelled against him. Before they had a chance to do anything, Nero heard what they were planning, and in order to save himself the disgrace of being put to death by his own people, he decided to kill himself. He was such a coward, however, that he couldn't quite bring himself to plunge the sword into his breast. Finally, his slave, impatient to finish the job, shoved the blade in. I always wonder how people like him come to power to begin with. I mean, you have such rulers as Augustus Caesar and Julius Caesar, that for some time, people actually liked having them as ruler. So it's just like, did Nero just come in and destroy everything? And, well, I mean, granted, he set fire to everything. But it's like, how did he get to be an emperor of Rome to begin with? Must research that.
Mommy.
Note to self.
It's just funny. Do you want to know why?
No, I'm going to keep reading. Thus was Rome rid of one of its worst rulers. So much for the first part of the blood and thunder story. Here is the second part. The Jews in Jerusalem didn't like to have Rome rule over them. They never had. Like the Christians, the Jews could not worship the emperor as a god. Big surprise there. But they were afraid to do much about it. In the year 70 AD, they rebelled. That is, they said they would no longer obey Rome or pay money to the government. The emperor sent his son, who was named Titus, Titus, with an army to put an end to the rebellion, to punish them as if they were disobedient children. The Jews crowded into their city of Jerusalem to make a last stand against the Romans. But Titus destroyed that city completely, and the Jews in it, 1 million of them, it is supposed. Then he robbed the great temple of all its valuable ornaments and brought them back to Rome. The great temple was then destroyed. To celebrate this victory over Jerusalem, an arch was built in the Forum at Rome, and through this arch, Titus and his army marched in triumph. On this arch was carved a procession, or a picture, a drawing, or probably the carving. A procession is like a parade. That's pretty much all I was trying to say. A parade. Showing Titus leaving the city of Jerusalem with the temple ornaments. Chief among these ornaments was a gold 7-branched candlestick he had taken from the city. Today, we see many copies in brass of this famous 7-branch candlestick. Is anybody thinking about Hanukkah?
Yes.
Yep. It is called a menorah, which is the Hebrew word for candlestick. The city was rebuilt later, but most of the Jews who survived have ever since been living in many other countries of the world. When people leave their homeland and spread, it is called the diaspora. So when you guys hear Abba talking about the diaspora, that's what they're talking about. Excuse me. Where was I? The third part of this story is the thunder. In Italy, there's a volcano named Vesuvius. You remember that volcano came from the name Vulcan, the blacksmith god, And people imagined that his forge in the heart of a volcano made the smoke and flame and ashes. From time to time, this volcano, Vesuvius, thundered and quaked and spouted forth fire and threw up stones and gas and boiled over with red hot melted rock called lava. It is the hot inside of the earth exploding. Yet people built houses and towns nearby and lived even on the sides of the volcano. That doesn't sound especially intelligent. Every once in a
Mommy, it doesn't even sound smart.
Indeed. Do you know what intelligent means?
No.
Smart. Her homeschooled. Okay, let's see.
Right, it wasn't
Shh. You keep making me lose my place, child. Every once in a while, their homes are destroyed when the volcano quakes or pours forth fire. Yet the same people go right back and build again in the same place. That sounds like situations that we have in our country, except for not volcanoes. There was, at the time of Titus, a little town named Pompeii, near the base of Vesuvius. Wealthy Romans used to go there to spend their summer. Suddenly, one day in the year 79 AD, just after Titus had become emperor, Vesuvius began to spout forth fire. The people living in Pompeii rushed for their lives, but they didn't have time to get away. They were smothered with the gases from the volcano before they had time to move, and falling down dead, were buried deep in a boiling rain of fire and ash, just where they happened to be when the eruption, as it is called, took place. So I know when Lily and I were talking about it the other day, she was upset that, it's like they found buried pets and that kind of thing, but didn't quite understand the fact that when this ash flow came from the sky, it wasn't a matter of we have time to go and get the things we need. It was get out now or you're going to die. And obviously a lot of people did. I mean, their lungs were essentially smothered by ash in the air and they died. So it wasn't a matter of not having time. I mean, it was a matter of not having time. It wasn't a matter of they don't care and they're not going to grab their pets. It was a matter of they don't have time. The people in their houses lay buried beneath the ash for nearly 2,000 years. And in the course of time, everyone had forgotten there ever had been such a place. People came back as they had before and built houses over the spot where everyone had forgotten there was once a city. Then one day, a man was digging a well over the spot where Pompeii had once been, and he dug up a man's hand. Now, not a real hand, but a statue of a hand. He told others, and they set to work and dug and dug and dug to see what else they could find until the whole town was dug out. And now one can go to Pompeii and see it very much as it was in 79 AD, before it was destroyed. There are houses of the Romans who went there to spend their vacations. There are shops and temples and palaces and public baths and the theater and the marketplace or the forum. The streets were paved with blocks of lava, once melted stone. They still show ruts which were worn into them by the wheels of the chariots of the Romans that the Romans used to drive. Stepping stones were placed at some crossings so that in case of heavy rains, when the streets were full of water, one could still cross on them from curb to curb. Hopping steps. These stepping stones are still there today. The floors of the houses were made of bits of colored stone to form pictures. These are called mosaics. Those are still there as well. In the vestibule of one house, there is in the floor a mosaic picture of a dog. Under it are the Latin words cave canem. What does that mean? Can you guess? It means look out for the dog. The bones of the people who were caught and buried alive in the ashes were also found. There were also found bronze ornaments worn by the women, vases that decorated the houses, pots and pans and dishes, and lamps which they used to light the houses. Beds and chairs were found just as they had been when they were buried. Still more remarkable, cakes were found on the table, a loaf of bread half eaten, meat ready to be cooked, a kettle on the fire with the ashes still underneath it, beans and peas, and one egg unbroken, probably the oldest egg in the world. So the lava flow and everything was so quickly in Pompeii that it essentially preserved the whole town. So you could only imagine what an amazing treasure trove that was for archaeologists to discover more about how people lived and all of that. So, well, that's it for chapter 37. Since we were supposed to do it yesterday and we didn't, we're going to do 37 and then stop recording, and then we're going to also do 38. So if you're up for chapter 38, take a look. That's all for now. Bye.